What is up, mental patients? My name is Tormental, and this is the list of top 10 Mafia roles that need to be added to Town of Salem, based on my own list of role suggestions. I've posted a list of role suggestions, around 70 of them, on the Blank Media forums, and the link should be in the description below if you want to read all of them. Let's get started on the list. Number 10 is the Fraudster. This is Mafia Deception, and before I start, actually, I should say, assume that all these Mafia roles get to have the Mafia chat, and of course, if the Godfather dies, they can become Mafioso. All the normal Mafia stuff applies. We're not going to be covering that. But yeah, number 10 is the Fraudster. Mafia Deception. You select one person at night to tamper with their votes the next day. So in other words, if I select you at night, the next day when you vote, your votes are going to be tampered with. Your votes, if I select you, will not show up if you choose to lynch somebody. In other words, if you're voting to put someone up on the stand, if you're voting somebody up on the noose, nobody will see that but you. And you won't even know that your vote has been tampered with. Your votes of guilty or innocent will look reversed to other people. So if you vote guilty, everybody else is going to see that you voted innocent. And if you vote innocent, everybody else is going to see you voted guilty. Now, you may think that the easy way to undo this is to say to people, oh, you saw that I voted guilty? Well, there must be a fraudster. Problem with that is that anybody can claim that. So, even if someone's evil and they did vote guilty on a clearly innocent person, they could just say, oh, the fraudster did it. If you want, this could reverse your votes, in actuality. Like if you vote innocent and it shows up guilty, maybe it would count as a guilty vote. But if people think that's overpowered, then it could just be reversed just in text. So in other words, your vote would count as innocent, but everybody would see it as guilty. Whichever way you want it. Number 9 is the Bootlegger. The Bootlegger is Mafia support. You can transport any Mafia member with another player each night. In other words, you can transport the Godfather with the Mayor. You can do whatever you want. You can switch any Mafia member. The person you're switching has to be a Mafia member, and then you switch them with any other player. You can't transport yourself, so it's not like the Transporter in that you can just get out of anything you want by transporting yourself. You can only switch Mafia members with non-Mafia. Okay? You can't switch two Mafia members, you can't switch two non-Mafia with each other. Basically, this is just a way to cause confusion, maybe protect your Mafia mates. If the vigilante knows that one of you is like the blackmailer, and, goes to shoot them that night, you, the bootlegger, can switch your Mafia mate with someone else, and try to get them, to kill the wrong person. This is basically, it's Transporter for the Mafia, but with some nerfs, so it's not really as powerful as the Transporter. As I said, you can only switch a Mafia with a non-Mafia. And, yeah. Number 8, the Hoaxer. The Hoaxer is Mafia. I didn't really put what they were in here. I accidentally put it in the wins with area here. But the Hoaxer is Mafia Deception. You can just pretend that is up there. But yeah. Mafia Deception, what you can do is you select the Mafia's victim up to 3 nights to change their murder type. So in other words, this is like the Janitor. The Janitor can only use their ability 3 times. The Hoaxer can only use their ability 3 times. So what will happen is when the Mafia kills somebody, and you select the Mafia's victim, their death type will show incorrectly. So the next day it'll say such and such, player was found dead last night, they were shot by a veteran. Or they were stabbed by a serial killer, or they were set on fire by an arsonist. So, yeah, it just picks a random, incorrect death type and assigns it to the Mafia's victim. This is good for causing chaos in town, because people will all say, wait a minute, there's a serial killer? Wait a minute, there's an arsonist? Wait, what? Oh, the Annie must be werewolf, because that person died to werewolf. And, it just basically is a way to make town scared of something that doesn't really exist, or cover up the fact that the Mafia killed. For example, if the cause of death says, that they were shot by a veteran, people are going to say, ooh, Mafia didn't kill last night. Who was blocked? Who was jailed? So it's a pretty powerful role, but you have to get the right, you have to use it at the right time. You have to, exploit it well enough. Number 7, the Ventriloquist. This is sort of a, suggestion that's been around for a while. It's been through many different forms, and no two suggestions are exactly the same, and this is basically my version. The Ventriloquist is Mafia Deception. You select someone at night, and the next day, everything you say will be in their name. So in other words, if I, am the Ventriloquist, and at night I select Magnasword, I'm Tormental, and I select Magnasword. That's our names in the round. The next day, everything I say will come up as if Magnasword said it. So this is good for incriminating people. It's good for causing chaos. You could do something like if there's an important role in town. You can talk as that person and start saying random crazy shit and make people think that they're Jester or something. The person will say, "Oh, I'm being, a ventriloquist is talking for me," and blah blah blah. And maybe people will believe that, maybe they won't. People won't be sure. You can click the sun icon during the day, and that will switch back to using your own name for the rest of the day. So that way, if I'm talking as Magnasword, and then someone says to me, Tormental, what's your role? I can be like, ah, crap, now I got to answer something. So I click the sun icon, and then I talk as myself for the rest of the day. So that way I can say, as Tormental, I can say, well, my role is, then I just lie. This is especially useful with a blackmailer, because if somebody blackmails your target, and then you, the ventriloquist, speak as them, there's not going to be any way to know that person wasn't really talking. Number 6 is the Kidnapper. The Kidnapper is Mafia support, and this is also one of my most controversial role suggestions. What you can do is you can kidnap one player, and that player will become a member of the Mafia. So this is sort of like, how the Retributionist can bring back one dead player. The Kidnapper can turn one player into a Mafia member. The only question about this, as I put in the additional comments area, is what Mafia role they would take. So, would they always become like a mafioso? Would they become a framer? Something low-powered? Would they become, whatever? It's just a matter of trying to iron out what exactly would the best Mafia role be for a kidnapped person to get. Should it be random? What should it be? The Kidnapper can only use their power once. That's an important thing to remember. So, if you are kidnapping another player to become another Mafia member, you got to realize that the Kidnapper now can't do anything. They have no powers. So all they are is just like a vote in the round. And, it's not like you're getting an extra Mafia member and then you have 2 Mafia members with powers, because the Kidnapper now has no more powers. The kidnapped player would see everybody's name as just Mafia and not their actual names, sort of like the spy, sees Mafia talking. Because someone who's kidnapped might be salty, and then they might want to throw the game and out the whole Mafia. So it's better if they just don't see who's in the Mafia, they just see the names, Mafia. And that way, somebody can say to the Kidnapper, or not the Kidnapper, they could say to the kidnapped person, they could say, do this and do that and do this and do that, and the kidnapped person would just have to do that and not really know who's telling them or why. But yeah. Number 5 on the list of the needed Mafia roles in Town of Salem is the Assassin. The Assassin is Mafia support, and what the Assassin does is up to 3 nights. Again, this is like the janitor, people who have limited usage. You can only do this 3 times. You select the Mafia's victim, and if the Mafia's victim is immune, or would be wearing a vest, or, is healed by the doctor, or something like that, the Assassin, by selecting the Mafia's victim, goes through all protections to kill them anyway. This is sort of like the way the werewolf goes through all protections, except, the Assassin has to know when to click, when not to click, to use their ability to go after somebody who is immune. Now, one way this could backfire in a really funny way is if the transporter switches the target with the Godfather, because then you'd go through the immunity and you'd kill your own Godfather. So, there's always a give and take with these roles. Something may seem overpowered, but you got to remember there are ways that it could really screw things up. You're killing, if you're the Assassin and you select, the Mafia's target, your killing will not be detected by the lookout or spy. You're just basically that good. You're a paid assassin who, is only going to work on killing somebody up to 3 times, because that's what they've been paid for. Number 4, as we close in on the end of the list, is the Goon. The Goon is another Mafia support role. You're sort of like the Veteran in that you go on alert up to 3 nights, but instead of killing people who visit you, like the veteran would do. You kill people who are trying to attack or roadblock the Godfather. So in other words, you just are a veteran for the Mafia, but you kill whoever attacks or roadblocks the GF, not yourself. This wouldn't do things. You wouldn't kill people who try to investigate the Godfather. You wouldn't kill like a witch who tries to control the Godfather. All you would do is if someone's trying to kill the Godfather or roadblock the Godfather, you would kill them. But only if you're on alert, and you have to know when to go on alert. Your kill would replace the Mafia kill. If somebody tries to kill or roadblock the Godfather and you kill them, the Mafia doesn't get 2 kills like another, the person they selected to kill and your veteran type kill. It just would replace that. Sort of like when the mafioso votes to kill somebody, but then the Godfather forces them to kill somebody else. If you kill somebody who visits the Godfather, you would essentially be usurping that, and, that would be the Mafia's kill for the night. Number 3, the Perjurer. If you're familiar with what perjury is, it's giving false testimony, bearing false witness. The Perjurer is Mafia deception. You select one Mafia member and one non-Mafia member to switch their information related to them that night. So in other words, if the sheriff checks the Mafia member you selected, they would see the information of the other person you selected. Okay? Let's work out a fake example. Let's say you select the Godfather and you select the escort, okay? So you're switching the information about the Godfather and the escort. So if a investigator looks at the escort, they'll see that the escort is Mayor or Godfather. If the investigator looks at the Godfather, they'll see that they're escort or consort. So you're taking the results from 2 people and switching them. It sounds complicated. It's not that complicated. If the lookout is watching somebody and they see the Godfather come to kill them, they'll actually see the person that you switched them with. It's just a crazy role. It's basically... Perjurer is sort of like the anti-investigative role. The Perjurer is there to just screw with all the investigative roles and give them, false information. Number 2, the Mole. The Mole has been one of the favorites, that I've seen from people, who have talked about my role suggestions, and here's why. The Mole is Mafia support, and you can hear all night chat, including the Jailer, Medium, and any others implemented. Okay? You don't hear the ghosts the Medium is talking to, but you'll hear the Medium side of the conversation. This is basically like... The Mole is like the spy for the Mafia, okay? The Mole can hear the Medium talking, they can hear the Jailer talking, etc. and so forth. They don't see the names, they just see, like, Jailer, says this, Jailer says that, Medium says this, Medium says that. So the Mole isn't just somebody who's going to automatically catch who the Jailer or Medium are, but, maybe they can pick up some clues in what's being said. You also still hear the Mafia chat. So you're going to have to filter out, what's the Jailer talking, what's the Mafia talking, and so on and so forth. This would be especially useful if, like, a Mafia member is jailed, because you'd be able to hear, like, what the Jailer's saying to them, and then you'd be able to, figure out if you need to do anything or change anything about what you're doing that night, so on and so forth. Like, maybe you have a consort, and, the Jailer, you figure out who the Jailer is, and you hear that night that the Jailer is saying in the jail, "I don't believe you, I'm going to execute," to, like, one of your Mafia members. And then you could say to the consort, "Quick, block the Jailer, he's going to execute them." It could be helpful in a lot of ways. Like the Medium. Mediums often will tell the dead chat their name. So this gives them, like, a little bit of a, hesitation about doing that sort of thing. A Medium might be saying to the dead chat, "Who's Mafia?" And then the Medium might say, "Okay, you're saying Tormental is Mafia? Okay, I'll let them know." And that would tell you as the Mole. The Mole could then say to the Mafia, "Tormental, they know that you're Mafia, the Medium was just told." And then you can act accordingly. So it's basically a nice little spy role for the Mafia. One thing I should mention is that you don't hear whispers as the Mole. You're not exactly an identical spy copy. All you hear is that, all the night chat that's going on. And now, the #1 Mafia role that needs to be added to Town of Salem from my lists, personally. The Conman. This is my favorite Mafia role ever, out of even the Mafia roles that currently exist in the game. The Conman is Mafia Deception. What you do is you select a player up to 3 nights, as again, you have 3 uses like the janitor, etc., to have their role displayed instead of the Mafia victim's true role. So in other words, you're not selecting the Mafia's victim, you're selecting anyone in the game. You can even choose a Mafia member, even yourself, to have the role displayed. How this works is, let's say the Mafia is killing Magnasword, which is a good idea in general, and you select 2% Skim. Okay, so the Godfather has selected to kill Magnasword, and you, as the Conman, have clicked the button for 2% Skim. So when Magnasword is shown dead the next day, it will show 2% Skim's roll for him instead. Isn't that crazy? So in other words, let's say Magnasword was the witch, okay? And 2% Skim is the investigator. The Mafia actually killed the witch, but because you, as the Conman, selected 2% Skim, Magnasword's roll will come up as investigator, which was 2% Skim's roll. So now, when Skim claims investigator, people will say, oh no, the investigator's dead in the graveyard right there. And then poor old Skim has to say there must be a Conman in the round, and, people maybe won't believe it, maybe they will, etc. and so forth. It's one of my favorite ideas, because this really screws with everything in the game. You can even, as I said, you can even select yourself or other Mafia members. So let's say that, Magnasword is killed by the Mafia, and you select one of the other Mafia members. Then Magnasword's role will incorrectly be shown as, like, blackmailer or consort or whatever the Mafia member's role is, and everybody will say, oh good, one of the Mafia is dead. But only you know that Mafia member's not actually dead. You fooled them. And of course, if Magnasword tells the medium, or he gets retributionisted, then of course that's going to fuck that up, and he's going to tell his true role. But you get the idea. I was thinking it might be nice if the Conman also showed as not suspicious to the sheriff, sort of like the Godfather, because, he is a conman, and, you are all about conning people. The thing is, like, story-wise, somebody dies, the Conman comes in and says, oh yeah, that's the investigator, look, here's his magnifying glass, here's his little Sherlock Holmes hat. The Conman is basically conning everybody into thinking that the dead person was something they weren't. I think that would be a very useful role. I think these would all be very useful roles. Let me know what you think below, what you like, what you don't like, what you change. If you have links to better role ideas, post them below.